I read somewhere Richard Branson said he had a guy who was stealing from him and he gave him a chance and he brought him back in and he's like, oh, I may have done this or whatever. I got to tell you, if you steal from me, you lie to me, I'll fire you on the spot. I have a video I showed all my new employees saying, here are the 5 things that will get you fired on the spot. One of them is lying. We're in a highly regulated industry as attorneys. We cannot lie. Like that's a big no-no. And if my people lie to me, let's say they've done something wrong, one of the attorneys or paralegals does something and then they cover it up, like that can adversely affect my client's case. I won't know. We could get sanctioned. We get sued for malpractice. It's just a bad thing. So the truthfulness, that's easy and straightforward. One time I had a woman, her husband died of cancer and she was a single mom, widow with kids, and she had a special needs kid and she was stealing. And I'm like, man, that was a hard call, and she was stealing documents and giving them to another firm. That wasn't like stealing food. I would have bought her food. She was stealing documents. We fired her and she went and then stole the rest of the documents and tried to go and sell them to another firm. Then she went and talked to a pastor of my church and said, I'm an evil person. Seriously, no lie. I'm like, okay, now I know. So those early fires were easy. It's the fires now where somebody's just not meeting the numbers and you try and find out if they don't share with you if they're going through a personal issue. Now, I've got a guy, he had pancreatitis, like really bad, and went septic and stuff. We're going to carry him. We kept him at full salary and everything. I want to help if I can. He can't help that. He's ill. Someday, hopefully, if I ever get ill, then my people will keep working hard and not take advantage of the situation. And I want to support him and his family. So we're there if somebody's got a real legit problem. But a lot of times a legit problem becomes an issue. There's an evolution of having to make the hard call in a business. And the evolution starts early on. It's hard because your emotions are involved. But then you get enough experience where you realize that you've made a tough call. It was the right call, but it's still going to hurt. It's going to hurt you. If you have a high level of empathy as a leader, and most leaders have a high level of empathy, it's going to hurt, but you've got to make those tough calls. And at the early stages for us, it was very easy. People were not doing their job. They lied. I had some guy who stole a bunch of burritos out of the lunchroom, stole some other people's lunches. Like legit, that's not even a hard call. Somebody who clocks in and then goes and walks across the street and goes on a coffee break while they're clocked. I mean, those are easy calls. That's not hard. The harder calls are where somebody just messed up. And I usually don't fire people if they make a mistake. Now, if it's a mistake, I said, hey, do this right now. And then they don't do it, and they said they did it. Yeah, I fired a guy one time for that. It compromised a client's case, and it was a bad one on me. And I didn't want to fire him, but I said, listen, I got to let you go because I told you to do something. You didn't do it. It's going to impact clients in the future. If I continue to have you here, I've got to let you go. And that was hard for me. So that's on the spectrum. I can tell you some outrageous stories. Employers get a bad rap oftentimes about how they don't treat people right. But let me tell you, some stuff that's been done to us, my wife and I, it's awful. A lot of stealing, like people have access to finances or they submit false bills, things like that. I could tell you 100 stories about stuff like that. And every year we get smarter and we have more and more controls. So for me, the tough call, you just got to do it because if you don't make the tough call in the moment, it's going to be worse later on. It, honest to God, always gets worse. If you got somebody who's going to steal from you, they're going to steal more later. They're never going to get better. Oh, I got caught. Sorry. I'll never do it again. No, they're always going to get worse. They'll try it again. So you got to be careful about that. When you talk about people who are like single moms who get evicted, they don't have enough money to make ends meet. That's a very, very difficult situation. If they're making minimum wage, I obviously believe people should make a living wage. But what's a living wage? Because you can always point to one example of someone who's making, say, a living wage, or some reason they can't. Let's say they can't get childcare. I mean, childcare is really expensive nowadays. And so there are many circumstances which can lead to somebody even becoming homeless. Right now, I'm in New York City. I'm in Manhattan. There's a billboard that says that homelessness has increased at the same rate as inflation. So that you had this rapid inflation in COVID. Now, I think if you look at some other data, the wages have also gone up. There's been great wage inflation. I know that as well. We've increased our wages too. Obviously, we want to maintain top talent. Hiring new people is even more and more expensive. We've had people talk about inflation of prices, but they don't talk about wage inflation to balance that out. There's always going to be people who are going to slip through the cracks. And I think we need to have a social net for that too. I'm not talking about socialism, but I think we need to have a social net. My wife and I, we deal with churches because I feel like churches are the best to administer aid in those situations. And the reason is that, that's more boots on the ground. I don't trust the government to administer wages in that sense. I think that socialism is a bad example, but could you point to examples where somebody really got washed out of society? It's worse with substance abuse, actually. My sister was a drug addict, a heroin addict. Thankfully, she had her parents who were able to give her housing. I mean, if you have a substance abuse problem and you have a kid, first of all, you're going to be wiped out of society and your kid is going to be lost too. And if it's a young man, he's probably going to end up in an institution by that mean jail. These are legit social problems, but the answer to those social problems is probably not giving everybody free housing. I don't think that there's a legitimate way to accomplish that will actually have the desired effect, because I think some people, they're just going to have problems. And so hopefully we have enough of a social net here in the United States where we can pick up the people who had that momentary collapse. But the problem I want to deal with is you've got people who are the working poor and you've got welfare, but there's a huge disincentive for them to go and actually try and make more money or get any skill set or anything because they may get off of welfare. Once you get somebody on welfare, there's a huge disincentive to get off of welfare. And I think economists will tell you that's the wrong way to go when you're dealing with a problem. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not a politician, but I do know that if you don't have a substance abuse problem, you don't have a mental illness, there are still circumstances that can get you homeless. And I don't know what the answer to that is, except, you probably made some bad decisions earlier on. And I made bad decisions too, thank God. And I could be homeless. I mean, that's the honest truth. So we've got to be compassionate, but at the same time, we can't eliminate all accountability for personal actions. I think that a lot of people have what they call optimism bias. You're going through life and you think it won't happen to you. In fact, I don't want to generalize, but I have a brother-in-law who's 24, and that guy thinks the whole world is going to be open for him. He doesn't need to take any classes. He doesn't need to do anything. He got his college degree. He should be making $100,000 a year. And I'm like, bro, he's in IT. I'm like, you got to get certifications. You got to do this other stuff. You got to work at it. When he's like, oh, I don't study on the weekends. I'm like, how are you going to get ahead? Oh, I don't need to. I got this. And so what happens is you make a series of bad decisions when you're young. And I've made bad decisions when I'm young. So I'm not speaking with condemnation here. I'm just giving an example. Thank God that I had enough room that my bad decisions didn't put me out on the street, because I almost got there when I was sleeping on the couch. And by the way, when I was sleeping on the couch, that was my bad decisions too. The bottom line is I had made some bad business decisions, and I made bad relationship decisions, and I made bad career decisions, and I made bad friendship decisions. Some bad stuff happened to me, like the illness in my family, my father, my sister's cancer, the protracted illness that took my mind off of my day-to-day work. That was really a problem. But the truth is, the real problems that took root that caused me to be sleeping on a couch were all problems or mistakes that I made anywhere between 1 year and 10 years before that. And so when I say this, I'm speaking from my personal experience as well. If you're in high school and you're not thinking about postgraduate education in some way, if you think you're going to be an Instagram influencer, you may want to have a backup career. Like my daughter, for example, my daughter wants to be a singer. I'm like, that's your hobby. My daughter may be a singer and she certainly is talented. I'm not sure she's talented enough to be a professional singer, but I love to hear her sing. But the truth is that I don't want her to put all of her eggs in that basket. So I'm convincing her undergraduate degree and hopefully business or law school. And she has an option because I can pay for it, thank God. Nobody was able to pay for my education. I had to work through and get a lot of student loans, but I did. I majored in history, but I was able to pay off my undergraduate. And law school, I took loans to finance my entire legal education. And then I was able to pay them off. I carried those loans for 10, 15 years, but I was making more as a lawyer than I would have ever made as a salesman. And so that was my decision. So I made some good decisions and I made some bad decisions. And the bad decisions almost got me homeless. And when you see somebody like that single mom with the kids, it's tragic. I agree with it. At the same time, there's a series of probably bad decisions and maybe some unfortunate circumstances that got us there. But we have optimism bias, so we don't ever think it's going to happen to us. If you asked me when I graduated from law school and I was given the commencement address, hey, Greg, do you know in 15 years you're going to be sleeping on a couch because you can't afford a bed? I would have said, that's ridiculous. And yet it happened. Now, fortunately, it happened because that's what gave me the fuel to take off in the next business and, get as big as we are and do the great things we've been able to do.
If you have anything to say, comment below. Look forward to hearing from you.